At 10:17 on the morning of my wife's funeral, Pastor Nathan laid the program across my knees. Helen's photograph was on the cover. Adrian's name filled half the second page. Mine was nowhere, not as her husband, family, or speaker. Then Nathan noticed the donation code my son-in-law had placed beneath Helen's favorite hymn. He reached inside his Bible and removed a cream envelope in my wife's hand. Helen told me to open this if they erased you from her service or redirected the memorial gifts. He said. Adrian rose so fast her chair scraped the floor. Marcus started toward us. Nathan broke the seal before they reached him. I had spent 44 years believing love meant carrying blame quietly. That morning, Helen forced me to decide whether silence was still love or merely permission. If your child erased you to protect a lie, would you stop the funeral or wait for proof? Tell me below. And subscribe to hear what Helen protected inside that envelope. 3 weeks earlier, Helen had still been alive in the narrow hospital bed we kept beside our living room window. In late October, the maples outside our house in Chattanooga turned the same copper color as her hair had been when we met. She could no longer lift her head without help. But she still noticed everything: the school bus grinding its gears at the corner, the neighbor's beagle digging beneath our fence, the way I warmed her teacup before pouring water, so the porcelain would not steal the heat. I was 68. 2 years retired after 34 years in the city fleet garage. Arthritis locked my left hand at dawn, but I could still hear a failing bearing from half a block away. Helen directed music at Grace Harbor Church, preferring the second row where nervous singers borrowed courage. Together we ran Saturday Hands, a church project that repaired ramps, rails, and cars for families caring for the sick. Helen kept every job in a blue cloth ledger. I did the repairs anonymously. Retirement had slowed me, and grief had made me cautious. But I was neither confused nor helpless. I kept service records, the way other men kept photographs. People receiving help shouldn't have to perform gratitude for the person holding the drill. I would tell her. That sentence later became evidence against me in my daughter's mind. Adrian had once sorted sockets on my garage floor. At 16, she asked me to park my diesel-smelling service truck around the corner from her school dance. I told myself embarrassment was part of growing up. She became a talented Nashville event planner and married Marcus Cole, a brand consultant who could make a demand sound like a favor. When Helen's cancer returned, Adrian organized appointments while Marcus redesigned the Saturday Hands website without being asked. Soon, Adrian introduced herself as Helen's primary family caregiver, and Marcus told church members I hid in the garage because illness frightened me. In truth, I slept beside Helen's bed, washed her hair, measured her medicine, and learned the angle that eased her spine. I left only to repair the church van carrying other cancer patients, a promise Helen had made me keep. Keep the wheels turning, she whispered. I know where you are. Adrian saw grease beneath my nails and called it absence. Meanwhile, Cole Legacy Events lost 2 major clients. Marcus lowered his voice during porch calls, and a bank envelope for Adrian arrived at our address. She snatched it from the table and accused me of reading it. I pretended not to notice how frightened she looked. Treating peace as something I could preserve by swallowing truth had become my worst habit. 2 days later, Pastor Nathan visited. Helen asked to speak with him alone. Marcus claimed he needed the bathroom, but I heard the floorboard near the hallway closet beneath his weight. Nathan emerged 40 minutes later, holding a cream envelope, private instructions for the service. He said, that evening, she asked me to bring the blue Saturday Hands ledger from the cedar chest. Its pages held 15 years of names, addresses, repair costs, and small notes in Helen's handwriting. Beside one family she had written, baby came home because the ramp was finished. Beside another first shower without fear, on the last blank page she made me write no memorial gifts through a private company. Grace Harbor only. Grief makes honest people vulnerable, she whispered. And frightened people tell themselves, borrowing is not stealing. I asked whether she meant Adrian. I mean, you must look before you trust. She placed a shaky H beneath the instruction. Helen died 6 mornings later with my hand over hers. Adrian arrived 20 minutes afterward and whispered, "I wasn't here." She stepped past my offered arms and pressed her face against Helen's blanket. Marcus arrived with coffee, legal pads, and a plan. By evening, he and Adrian had chosen every detail without asking me. For 2 days, I mistook exclusion for protection. Then the funeral director emailed the first program proof, beloved wife of Benjamin Lawson, mother of Adrian Lawson Cole, grandmother of Sophie Cole. It listed me to speak after Nathan. I began writing on an old maintenance form about warm teacups, second-row singers, and the promise to keep the wheels turning. The next morning, Adrian called, "Dad." Marcus and I made some edits. The service needs a cleaner emotional arc. It's a funeral, not a product launch. Silence held between us. Then she said, "That's exactly why you shouldn't speak." Adrian arrived with a rented charcoal suit. "Your brown jacket photographs old." She said, "It is old." Marcus set his laptop on our dining table, the same table where Helen had folded choir robes for 20 years. He rotated the screen toward me. The revised funeral program looked cleaner, more expensive, and less true. The line identifying Helen as my wife had disappeared. It now read, "Celebrating Helen Lawson, mother, grandmother, teacher, and friend." Adrian was listed as host of the remembrance. Marcus would introduce a new Helen Lawson Community Care Fund. Sophie's name appeared beneath a photograph captioned, "3 generations of Lawson women." I was not listed anywhere. "You removed me," I said. Adrian folded her arms. "We centered Mom. You removed her marriage?" "Dad." The last year was complicated. Marcus lowered his eyes in practiced respect. Adrian carried the emotional burden. The service should reflect her experience. "Your mother's lived experience included me?" Adrian's face hardened. "Did it? She was dying while you fixed things for strangers." There are accusations so cruel that a man answers them at once. Others find the exact wound he already carries. And silence enters before reason can. I had questioned every hour away from Helen. Marcus knew because I had confessed that fear on the porch. "I told your mother I would keep the program going." I said, "She asked me to." "Convenient." Adrian replied, "She can't confirm that now." From the hall came the sound of a dropped book. 16-year-old Sophie stood in the doorway with Helen's gray-green eyes. "Grandma did tell him," Sophie said. Marcus closed the laptop. "This is an adult conversation." I heard her. Adrian turned to her. "You heard pieces. Grief makes memories unreliable." "I know what I heard." Marcus guided her toward the hall. "Wait in the car." After the front door shut, Adrian placed the rented suit over a chair. "You will sit in the second family pew. You won't speak. We need 1 day without conflict." Second family pew? The first one is for the people who were present at the end. The lie was too large for anger. I had measured morphine at 3 in the morning and learned to sleep in 20-minute pieces. I reached for the laptop, but Marcus moved it away. "The program is approved," he said. "By whom?" "By the family. I am the family." His smile remained, but its warmth disappeared. Legally, perhaps emotionally, people associate Adrian with Helen's care. They were not merely arranging a funeral. They were establishing a record. Helen had warned me, "Look before you trust." I asked to see the donation information. Marcus reopened the laptop. A black code beneath "Continue Helen's work" named the Helen Lawson Community Care Fund. "Grace Harbor set this up," I asked. "We're coordinating with the church," Adrienne said. Marcus leaned back. "Your wife's little repair project has no structure. Adrian can make it sustainable. Saturday Hands already belongs to the church." Adrian slapped her palm against the table. "Stop acting like we're stealing something. My company is fronting expenses. The fund will reimburse us. And then we'll expand the project." Mom would have wanted her work to grow. There it was, the sentence Helen had anticipated. Borrowing is not stealing. How much does your company need reimbursed? Adrian's eyes moved toward Marcus. He answered for her. We haven't finalized the accounting. I understand when an answer has been replaced by an insult. She gathered the garment bag and shoved it against my chest. Wear the suit. Sit where we put you. Let people remember, Mom, without making the day about your pride. They left. Sophie glanced back from the car. On the table, Marcus had forgotten a discarded program proof, not the version he had shown me. This one still named me as Helen's husband, but a yellow note in the margin read, "Remove Ben from family copy. A says he will disrupt the message." Below that, another note said, "Replace church giving link with HLC fund before final export." The initials beside both comments were MC. I opened Helen's blue ledger. Her last instruction waited beneath mine. No memorial gifts through a private company. Grace Harbor only. I called Pastor Nathan. Did Helen leave you more than service instructions? She left me a sealed letter. He said, and 2 conditions for opening it. Before he could explain them, my call waiting sounded. It was Sophie. I answered and heard her whisper, "Grandpa." Mom took my phone. "I'm calling from Grandma's old one. Marcus says the funeral money will fix everything, but he says you can never see the real account." Then a door opened on her end, and the line went dead. I wanted to drive to Nashville and bring Sophie home, but she had not reported physical danger. Charging into their house would make me the unstable old man Marcus described. Her phone went to voicemail, so I called Grace Harbor's treasurer, Linda Park, a retired hospital auditor who could detect a missing receipt like a surgeon finding a tumor. "Has the church opened a Helen Lawson Community Care Fund?" No account was approved. Why? I read her the giving link printed beneath the square code on the discarded proof. "Don't scan it from your personal phone." She said, "Send me a photograph." I photographed the program, the margin comments, and Helen's last ledger page. Linda asked whether I had changed anything. I told her exactly where I found each item and placed them in separate clear sleeves from Helen's old choir office. 30 minutes later, Linda called back. The page uses Helen's photograph and Grace Harbor's address, but the merchant is Cole Legacy Events, Adrian's company. Yes. The disclaimer says administrative costs may be deducted before charitable distribution. There is no percentage and no receiving charity identified. The disclaimer allows unspecified administrative costs, and it displays our tax number without permission. She said, I needed facts, not outrage. Linda saved timestamp screenshots, contacted the processor, and found Marcus's email requesting the church logo without disclosing the private account. "Ben," she said, "there are already 11 donations." My stomach tightened. "Can they be stopped? I've requested a hold. The church must certify the page is unauthorized." I called Pastor Nathan again and told him what Linda found. He did not read Helen's letter. Her instructions required him to confirm independently that I had been erased or the gifts redirected. "A draft is not enough," he said. Helen did not ask me to act on suspicion, even dying. My wife had built fairness into the truth. Funeral director Carla Jimenez confirmed that Adrian was listed as family coordinator. Who is listed as family coordinator? Adrien Cole. Was I removed after the first proof? "I can't release internal notes by phone," Carla said. "Meet me here." The change concerned me. She offered to meet at the funeral home. I brought the discarded proof in its sleeve but did not tell her about the donation account. Carla opened the production record on a monitor facing both of us. At the funeral home, her production record showed that the first proof named me as husband and speaker. Adrian removed my speech. Marcus then deleted every reference to me. Carla had asked whether the omission was intentional. Adrian replied, "Yes." Benjamin Lawson was estranged from Helen during her final year. Do not accept changes from him. Carla printed and stamped the approval log. "I wondered," she said. "You signed every hospice transport form we received." Outside, I remembered 7-year-old Adrian asleep against my shoulder during choir rehearsal. Memory is cruel when the person hurting you once trusted your hands. Pastor Nathan confirmed that the final program satisfied Helen's first condition. Still, he suggested we give Adrian one chance to correct it. Helen's letter may contain private things. He said, truth should not become a weapon because we have permission to use it. I agreed. We arranged a family meeting at Grace Harbor for the following afternoon. Nathan, Linda, Adrienne, Marcus, and I would attend. Sophie asked to come. But Marcus said grief had made her confused. Before the meeting, I opened the blue ledger. Saturday, hands had completed 286 repairs. Near the middle, Helen had taped a photograph of 19-year-old Adrian painting porch rails. Under it, Helen had written, "Our girl understands that service is love made visible." At the church meeting, Adrian arrived in black silk and dark glasses. Marcus carried a leather folder. I placed the final program proof, Carla's approval log, and Helen's ledger page on the table. Put my name back. I said, remove the private donation code. Let Grace Harbor receive any gifts. Adrian did not touch the papers. The programs are already printed. Print them again. Do you know what that costs? Less than lying. Marcus opened his folder to invoices, totaling $48,000 for strategy, branding, and management. The fund will repay company advances before distributing grants. Linda adjusted her glasses. Your company did not advance that for this funeral. It includes development work for the future foundation, a foundation that does not legally exist. Adrian looked at me as if I had invited strangers to shame her. You went through our finances. No. I said, your husband placed your company account beneath your mother's hymn. Nathan slid the cream envelope onto the table. Helen's handwriting stopped every voice in the room. Your mother gave me instructions. He told Adrienne, if Ben was erased or if gifts were redirected, I am permitted to read this. Marcus leaned forward. A dead woman cannot authorize public business claims. Nathan's eyes stayed on Adrian. I am not asking your husband. For 1 second, my daughter looked like the child from the ledger photograph. Then Marcus's hand settled over hers. The program and funds stay, she said. Read that letter, and we'll hold the church responsible. Nathan returned the envelope to his Bible. Then I will wait until the service, he said. Marcus smiled. Believing he had won, I understood something he did not. Nathan had not promised silence. He had promised Helen that the truth would be read in the room where the lie was used. The night before the funeral, I warmed Helen's teacup and watched steam rise from a cup no one would lift. Grief had removed my last excuse for confusing patience with virtue. I had parked around corners, ignored forgotten birthdays, mailed loans, and let Marcus speak over me to spare Adrian embarrassment. Helen had warned me about that habit long before she became sick. Every time you absorb a consequence, Helen once said, you teach them where to send the next one. At 8 that evening, someone knocked softly at the back door. Sophie stood beneath the porch light, wearing a rain jacket over her funeral dress. Pastor Nathan's wife, Miriam, waited in a car at the curb. Mom thinks I'm at the church with the youth choir. Sophie said, Mrs. Pierce brought me because I told her I needed to give you something. She held Helen's old phone. There are voice notes. Grandma told me not to let anyone use her funeral to make me lie. That was not consent to search every private recording. Nathan and Linda agreed to preserve the phone unopened until counsel advised us. Sophie began crying with the restrained, embarrassed sound of someone who had been waiting days for permission. Mom said you didn't care about Grandma. Marcus said if I defended you, people would think grief had made me unstable. They took my phone because I texted Carla about the program. Did either of them threaten to hurt you? No. But Marcus said I could ruin Mom's company and we'd lose our house. There was the deeper control. They had placed the family's financial survival on a 16-year-old girl's silence. I moved the warm teacup aside and took her hands. You are not responsible for their company, their house, Or the consequences of choices adults made? What if mom goes to jail? No one at the funeral decides that tomorrow is about stopping a lie and protecting the gifts. Mom will hate me. She may be angry. Anger is not proof that you did wrong. Sophie pulled a folded sheet from her jacket. It was an email printout from the funeral home. She had asked Carla for the original proof after seeing my name disappear. Carla had copied Adrian because Sophie was a minor. Marcus intercepted the message and made Sophie delete it. But Helen's old phone still received mail through a shared family account. In Adrian's reply to Marcus, one sentence appeared beneath the forwarded proof. Once Dad is out of the program, no one will question why the fund belongs to us. I felt the room tilt. Until then, some part of me had believed Marcus invented the plan and Adrian followed because she was frightened. Her sentence proved intention. It did not prove every invoice false. But it proved my erasure was connected to the money. Sophie watched my face. Do you hate her? No. How can you not? Because love does not disappear when someone does wrong. I looked again at Adrian's words. But access can. Trust can. Help can. That distinction was the boundary I should have learned years earlier. We saved the email headers and gave the phone to Linda. The church attorney advised Grace Harbor to disable the code on its channels, preserve every record, and interrupt any public claim that the church controlled the fund. Accountability would arrive through documents and frozen transactions, not a theatrical arrest. After Sophie left with Miriam, I called Adrian. You have until 9 tomorrow morning. I said, restore the truthful program. Remove the code. And tell Nathan what happened. If you do, we can keep the financial matter out of the service while it is reviewed. You're threatening me on the night before Mom's funeral. I'm giving you a private door before the truth reaches a public room. Marcus's voice sounded in the background. Hang up. I continued. Sophie is not responsible for protecting your company. Do not pressure her again. What did she tell you? Enough to know she will not carry your fear. Adrian's breathing became shallow. For a moment, I expected her to cry or confess. Instead, she said, Mom chose me to protect her legacy. Then why did she give the pastor a letter she hid from you? At 8:45 the next morning, Pastor Nathan sent me a photograph of the final printed program. My name was still absent. The donation code remained beneath Helen's hymn. At 8:52, Linda received confirmation that the payment processor had placed the fund under review. 23 donations totaling $9,400 were being held and could not be withdrawn. At 9, I put on my own brown jacket. The elbows were worn. Helen had repaired the lining twice. In the inside pocket, I found a paper star she had folded during one of Adrian's school concerts. I left the rented charcoal suit hanging untouched. Grace Harbor filled before 10 with Helen's former students, Saturday Hands families, and patients who had ridden in the church van. Adrian had transformed the sanctuary entrance into a branded memorial. A white display wall carried Helen's photograph above the words, "Her work continues." Beside it stood a large sign bearing the unauthorized donation code. Marcus wore a headset and stationed 2 employees beside the sign to tell mourners the gifts supported Helen's foundation. I scanned it on a church tablet while Linda filmed the display. The page still used Grace Harbor's address and tax number. That confirms public use. Linda said, the funeral home had delivered boxes of printed programs. Carla met me beside the guest book. I'm sorry, she whispered. I brought the production record and the original approved biography. If Pastor Nathan needs them, I'm staying. Adrian saw us speaking and approached. Her face was composed, but the skin beneath her eyes looked bruised from lack of sleep. You wore that jacket? Your mother liked it. Please sit where you're assigned. Put my name back and remove the sign. Not here. Here is where you put the lie. Marcus arrived before she could answer. Ben, today is not the venue for your accounting dispute. Then stop collecting money. Every transaction is being handled professionally. The processor froze the account. For the first time, he lost control of his face. His eyes moved to the donation sign, then to Adrienne. You contacted the processor. Grace Harbor reported unauthorized use of its tax number. Adrian gripped my sleeve. Do you understand what you've done? Vendors are due Monday. Memorial gifts are not your operating loan. Marcus stepped close enough that only I could hear him. You think a few screenshots make you dangerous. You are an old mechanic in a brown jacket. By next week, people will remember the service we give them, not the husband who made a scene. Linda was filming the public display behind him. His words were not needed to prove the account. This is your last chance. I said, no. Ben, it's yours. Sit quietly. And Adrian may still let you see Sophie after today. That crossed the final line. He had converted my granddaughter into leverage and assumed I would surrender because I always had. I removed his hand from my sleeve. You do not decide whether my granddaughter knows me. Adrian looked from him to me. Marcus, don't talk about Sophie. I'm protecting our family. You're using her. The doubt in Adrian's voice lasted only a second. Marcus put his hand at the back of her neck and guided her toward the sanctuary. We have a service to run. Sophie stood 10 feet away in her choir robe. She had heard him. Nathan stepped from the side hall and spoke to her quietly. She nodded. Though her face had gone pale, the organ began. We entered the sanctuary. The first pew had 5 reserve cards. Adrian, Marcus, Sophie, Helen's sister June, and a local foundation director, Marcus, hoped to impress. The second pew bore a single card with my name. I picked it up and considered obeying from exhaustion. Helen was gone. No corrected page would return our mornings. Then Rosa Martinez, the woman whose porch had started Saturday hands, touched my shoulder. Ben, why are you back here? She asked. Before I could answer, Sophie stepped out of the first pew. She removed her reserved card and placed it beside mine in the second. I'm sitting with Grandpa. Adrian whispered her name with warning. Sophie faced her mother. Grandma told me not to lie for anyone at her funeral. It was not a speech. It was one clear decision. June moved next. Then Rosa. Within moments, the so-called second family pew held the people who refused to let arrangement become truth. I sat between Sophie and Helen's empty place in my mind. The service began with music. Nathan spoke about Helen's gift for helping uncertain voices find the melody. A former student sang Psalm 23. No one rushed. No one performed grief. Then Adrian approached the lectern. She spoke beautifully. That was part of what made the lie painful. She described Helen's patience, her music, and her belief in service. She thanked Marcus for standing beside her through the lonely final year. She referred to herself as the person who had carried Helen through the hardest decisions. She never said my name. At the end, a screen descended behind her. The words Helen Lawson Community Care Fund appeared above the same square code. My mother believed love should become action. Adrienne said, today, our family is launching a foundation to continue the work she entrusted to us. Marcus stood near the projector. Watching the foundation director in the first pew, Linda rose from her seat. Pastor, Grace Harbor did not authorize that fund. Murmurs moved through the sanctuary. Marcus reached for his headset. Please cut the microphone. Nathan did not cut it. He walked to the lectern and placed Helen's cream envelope beside Adrian's notes. Helen anticipated that her name might be used this way. He said, she gave me 2 conditions. Both have now been met in this room. Adrian stared at the envelope. Pastor, don't. Nathan looked toward me. I could have stopped him. Helen's private words would remain private if I asked. My daughter would retain one more place to hide, and perhaps one more chance to return without public shame. Then Marcus whispered to her, loud enough for the lectern microphone to catch. Let him read it. It's an old woman's sentimental note. Once we show the invoices, he'll look vindictive. He believed he had already defined what the letter could mean. Nathan broke the seal. Nathan unfolded 3 pages and a witness statement. Helen authorized this only if her marriage was erased or gifts were redirected. This is not a will or criminal accusation. It is her account of her life and instructions to her church. My wife had not tried to control courts from the grave. She had preserved her voice. Nathan began. To the people I love, if you are hearing this, someone has confused presentation with truth. Adrienne closed her eyes. I was Benjamin Lawson's wife for 44 years. Ben was not absent from my final year. He kept me home, washed my hair, measured my medicine, and slept beside my bed. When he left, it was because I asked him to keep Saturday Hands and our patient van operating. Behind me, someone began to cry. Nathan continued, Adrienne, I know your work is in trouble because you said so when you thought I slept. Fear can explain a wrong choice. It cannot make it right. My daughter opened her eyes and looked at Marcus. Do not use memorial gifts to rescue Cole legacy events. Saturday Hands belongs to Grace Harbor. Any gift in my memory must go directly to the church, with public records and no family fee. Marcus rose. This is inappropriate. She was heavily medicated. Hospice nurse Ellen Brooks stood. Helen signed during a documented period of full capacity. I recorded her orientation, medication time, and condition. Marcus looked toward the side aisle. One of his employees began packing a laptop. Nathan returned to the letter. Ben, you will want to protect Adrienne from the consequences of this. Please do not. Protection is not the removal of consequences. It is the refusal to let one bad decision become a life built on lies. The words entered me like a hand placed firmly between my shoulders. Sophie, you are not responsible for adult fear. You may tell the truth even when someone you love asks you to carry their shame. Sophie took my hand. If Ben's name was removed from my program, put it back in your memory. A page cannot end a marriage, but the willingness to erase someone is a warning. Nathan stopped. The final paragraph was shorter. Ben completed 286 repairs and kept the church van running without payment. Quiet service deserves an honest record. Do not applaud him. Help someone. No one applauded. That was how I knew they had heard her. Rosa Martinez lifted her cane. He built the ramp that brought my husband home. 2 other families named a repaired van and a bathroom rail. They corrected the record, one fact at a time. Marcus moved toward the lectern. No one disputes that Ben volunteered. The financial presentation is more complex than a dying woman's impression. Cole Legacy advanced professional services. Adrienne was authorized to develop the brand. Linda carried a binder forward. The church never approved your fund, invoices, or use of its tax number. All 23 donations are frozen. Nathan read a notice the displayed fund was not operated by Grace Harbor, and donors could choose a refund or transfer. No verdict beyond the church's authority. Marcus pointed at me. He manufactured this because he couldn't tolerate Adrienne being recognized. Carla stood near the doors. The original biography named Ben as husband and speaker. Adrienne approved his removal before he ever contacted me. Nathan looked at Adrienne. Is that true? Marcus answered. The service required editorial focus. I asked Adrienne. My daughter gripped the lectern. I approved it. Her voice was barely audible. Marcus stepped closer. Under emotional pressure, she pulled her arm away from him. I approved it. She repeated. I told Carla my father was estranged from Mom. The admission cost her. I saw it in the way her shoulders folded. But no one rescued her from it. Why? Nathan asked. Adrienne looked at me. Marcus said donors trust a simple story. The daughter continues the mother's work, and the old mechanic doesn't understand growth. Marcus gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You're collapsing now. After everything I did to keep your company alive, you told me the donations were a bridge loan. They were. You told me Dad had abandoned her. You believed it because it was true enough. Sophie stood, her choir robe trembling. It wasn't true. Grandma said Grandpa was keeping her promise. You made me delete the funeral home email because it proved Mom removed him. Marcus turned toward her. Sophie, sit down. No. That single word changed the room more than any accusation. She handed Linda Helen's phone. Preserve the email. I won't let them say I imagined it. Marcus reached for Adrian's shoulder. She stepped away. "Did you move money before the account was frozen?" she asked him. "This is not the place." "Did you?" "I transferred an authorized administrative deposit." Linda looked at the processor notice. The transaction log shows an attempted transfer of $6,000 at 8:12 this morning. It did not clear. Adrian stared at him. "You said nothing would move before the funeral." "I was protecting payroll. With my mother's photograph, with a fund you approved." Adrian looked at the foundation director seated in the first pew, then at the branded screen behind her, then at the printed program that had removed the man who stayed beside her mother's bed. She picked up the microphone. "Turn off the donation slide," she said. Marcus did not move. "Turn it off." One of his employees closed the laptop. Helen's photograph vanished from the screen. Leaving the plain wooden cross behind it, Adrian continued, "The Helen Lawson Community Care Fund should not receive another dollar. I approved the program change in the fundraiser. My father objected before the service. He gave me a chance to correct both. I refused." Marcus whispered, "You are destroying us." "No, I'm saying what we did." "Linda, send every donor the notice. If company money was charged as funeral expense, I will provide the records. If the company owes refunds, I will sign them." It was not redemption. It was the first honest action she had taken after a chain of dishonest ones. Marcus headed for the side door. No one detained him. But the church attorney served a preservation notice covering the page. Invoices, emails, and transaction records. The evidence would not leave with him. I remained in the second pew. Adrian looked at me from the lectern. "Dad." I raised one hand. "Finish your mother's service." Not our argument. Not her apology. Helen's service. Nathan replaced the branded program with Helen's blue ledger. We sang, "Be Thou My Vision." My voice failed. Sophie carried the melody until I found it. After the hymn, Nathan invited me to speak if I wished. Helen warmed other people's courage. I said, when I didn't know how to help, she gave me something useful to do. When I used work to hide, she told me. When I used silence to protect people from consequences, she told me that too. I looked at Adrian. Her face was wet. My wife was not a brand. If you want to remember her, help someone who cannot repay you. Do not erase truth to make love easier. That was all. Marcus did not attend the burial. After the last prayer, Adrian approached. I left him. She said, "At least for now, that is your decision. Can you forgive me?" The old me would have mistaken immediate comfort for mercy. "I love you," I said. "But forgiveness is not the first step. Truth is, restitution is, time is." Adrian nodded. I had finally refused to carry what belonged to her. What happens now? We stopped letting a funeral program decide who we are. Accountability arrived by registered mail. Interviews, spreadsheets, and mornings when none of us knew whether to call. 14 donors chose refunds, and 9 transferred their gifts to Grace Harbor. No donated money reached Cole Legacy Events. The church referred the tax number misuse and invoices to state regulators. Investigators requested records while Marcus's lawyers called it careless branding rather than fraud. The review continued for months. Cole Legacy Events closed before Christmas. Records showed it had been insolvent before Helen entered hospice. The memorial fund was meant to buy Marcus another week. Adrian reimbursed the church's legal and printing costs and sent every guest a correction. It did not call her Marcus's victim or me vindictive. I knowingly removed my father, Benjamin Lawson, from my mother's funeral program and approved a memorial fund that was not operated by Grace Harbor Church. Both decisions were wrong. Linda had rejected a first draft saying mistakes were made. Mistakes don't sign emails. She told her. People do. Marcus and Adrian separated. Whether their marriage would end was not my choice. She began individual counseling and took a project management job at a hotel where she had no authority over charitable funds. She moved into a small apartment near Sophie's school. Sophie met with a counselor too. Not because grief had made her unreliable, but because adults had made her responsible for their survival. She chose to spend Wednesday evenings with me and alternate weekends with her mother. While Adrian and Marcus worked through a temporary parenting agreement, no one used her visits as a reward. We wrote down my boundaries. Adrian would not use Sophie as a messenger or enter my house unannounced. I would not loan money or cover legal bills. If she blamed Helen, Sophie, or me during counseling, I would leave. 3 sessions ended early. In the 4th, she stopped herself while blaming Carla. Carla only kept the record. She said, "I created it." I remained seated. That was how trust returned, not as warmth, but as evidence. Pastor Nathan asked what I wanted done with Helen's letter. It belonged to her estate as a personal paper, but she had given the church authority to read and retain a copy of the memorial instructions. I placed the original in the cedar chest beside the blue ledger. Grace Harbor kept a certified copy of the paragraphs concerning Saturday hands. The project did not become a foundation. Memorial gifts bought lumber, non-slip flooring, vehicle parts, and a second-hand lift. Linda published every expense. Saturday hands completed 31 repairs in 6 months. I did fewer of them. That surprised people. They assumed the lesson of Helen's letter was that my anonymous work deserved recognition, so I should return to working twice as hard. But Helen's last months had also shown me how easily usefulness could become hiding. I trained 4 younger volunteers to inspect ramps and service the van. I let them make decisions. On Saturdays, I finished at noon instead of staying until dark. Sometimes I went home and sat beside the living room window with no machine to repair. The silence hurt. I stopped treating that hurt as a problem requiring tools. In March, Grace Harbor held a memorial choir concert. Nathan asked whether I wanted a photograph of Helen on the program cover. Use the choir, I said. She never liked standing alone. The cover showed 2 rows of singers from different years. Helen stood near the middle, one hand lifted, mouth open on a note the photograph could not preserve. Inside, the program included a short history of Saturday hands. Linda brought me the proof before printing. The first sentence read, "Founded by Helen and Benjamin Lawson, with volunteers from Grace Harbor Church." I stared at my name. "We can leave it anonymous," Linda said. For years, anonymity had protected the dignity of the people we helped. It had also made it possible for Marcus to call my service absence and for Adrian to believe him. Helen had not asked for applause. She had asked for an honest record. "Leave it," I said. On the night of the concert, Adrienne arrived alone. She wore a plain navy dress and carried no folders. For the first time in months, she did not approach me immediately. She helped an elderly choir member find her seat, then sat 3 rows behind Sophie and me. Afterward, she waited in the fellowship hall while volunteers stacked chairs. "I brought you something," she said. From her purse, she removed a corrected copy of Helen's funeral program. It was not rebranded or redesigned. Carla had reprinted 1 copy from the original proof. "Beloved wife of Benjamin Lawson." My name appeared beneath Helen's, exactly where it had been before. Fear edited it out. "I know this doesn't fix it," Adrienne said. "No. I wanted you to have the page that should have existed." I accepted it. She looked toward Sophie, who was laughing with 2 choir friends. "She trusts you more than me?" "Right now, yes." The honesty hurt her, but she did not ask me to soften it. "Do you think she ever will again?" "If you stop asking her to prove it before she feels it." Adrian nodded. "And you?" I thought about telling her I would always be her father. That was true. But family titles had been used too often as demands. "I see what you're doing," I said. "Keep doing it when no one is watching." She wiped her eyes and gave a small, unsteady smile. We did not embrace. Some distances should close slowly enough for truth to walk with them. At home, I placed the corrected program in Helen's cedar chest. I did not destroy the false one. I kept both copies beside the letter and the blue ledger. One showed what fear had tried to erase. The other showed that a record could be corrected without pretending the erasure never happened. I warmed Helen's teacup one final time, then stopped before pouring water. The habit had carried love after its purpose was gone. I dried the cup and placed it in the cabinet beside mine. Not hidden. Not waiting. Outside, the church van turned onto our street. One of the new volunteers was driving. Its rebuilt transmission shifted cleanly as it passed. I could hear that from half a block away. Helen had been right about something else. Keeping the wheels turning did not mean I had to remain beneath every vehicle. My daughter had removed my name from a page, but the deepest wound was not the missing ink. It was the years I had taught her that I would accept any version of love as long as she still called me Dad. Helen's letter did not restore my dignity. It reminded me that dignity was mine to stop surrendering. If someone in your family tried to rewrite your place in their life, what proof, not promises, would you require before trusting them again? Share your boundary below. And subscribe for more stories about quiet people who learn that love can remain while access, trust, and forgiveness must still be earned.